Bienvenidos and welcome back to Puro Pinche Gol, the place where we discuss all things usmnt y la seleccionmexicana. My name is Adrian. Joining me once again is my co-host Tocayo, Adrian. Adrian, what's good, man? How are you, dude?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thursday night, getting ready to do another pod episode with you and chat about this mumbo jumbo between MLS and Saudi Pro League.
Yeah, we went ahead and threw in Liga MX in there because why not? This is going to
Exactly.
be the final end-all, be-all debate of which is better, Liga MX, MLS, or Saudi Pro League. There's been what started all this week was the comments made by Cristiano Ronaldo, right? That he pretty much said that because of him, the Saudi Pro League is growing. All the stars are going there now, even young stars, and that he didn't want to come to MLS. He doesn't want to come to MLS. Saudi Pro is better. That's basically what he said. So here we're gonna try to see, MythBusters, if that's true or not. Who has the better league? MLS, Saudi, and since we're PPG, Puro Pinche Gol. We covered both Selección Mexicana and MLS. Man, we're throwing Liga MX in there. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to base it based off six key factors here. Attendance, marketability of the leagues, team parity in the league, the fan bases, player exportations, which generate money for the league, and miscellaneous, salary cap, pro rel, etc. Before we get into, I kind of want to clarify that they all have their perks, they all have their disadvantages. I think no question that the best league in terms of pure soccer skill and level, and this might hurt a lot of people, a lot of our PPG fan base, but I think it's Liga MX. Liga MX is still the better league in terms of quality of play, and that's shown in the past 20 years or forever. They just dominate the concacaf champions. Obviously the concacaf champions is not the end all be all of quality level, but I mean, to be that dominant in the region's champions league says that when it comes down to it, the Liga MX is still the top dog in terms of level. MLS is closing in on it, but as of right now, that level is still there. No question, the league with the biggest global reach is the MLS. They just signed Messi. They're signing all his buddies from Barcelona. They have that deal with Apple. So I think they're the most marketable league, and no question that the league that can form the best starting 11. If you were to have an all-star match between the best starting 11 Liga MX, the best starting 11 MLS, best starting 11 Saudi Pro, I think Saudi Pro. They signed a lot of great European talent this last season, trying to build for that 2023-2024 season, and they've not only gotten aging stars like Cristiano, Benzema, but they've also gotten stars still in their prime that we'll discuss. So like I said, pros for each league, cons for each league, but let's get into it, man. We're going to talk about attendance. What can you tell me about the average attendance for Liga MX for the 2023 Clausura and 2022 Apertura?
So, doing some numbers online, we can safely say that Liga MX is perhaps the league out of the three with the most attendance per match, with an average of based on the last tournament, an average of 23,162 fans attending per match. And the one from 2022 Apertura was 20,533. So I guess between, because one thing to mention is that Mexico has two tournaments per year. So between both tournaments, which is the last competitive year or soccer year in Mexico, the average overall is 21,847 fans on the stands per match.
Right, and that just blows out of the water the Saudi Pro League from the 2022 to 2023 season. Their attendance was 9,339. Their average attendance. They're making all these moves. They plan for that to go up, obviously,
Mhm.
but that's still a ways away, even with the Cristiano Ronaldo effect.
Yeah.
And Liga MX is a lot closer MLS is a lot closer to Liga MX with 21,033 average attendance for the 2022 season. That's right on par with the 2019 season, which was the last season not affected by COVID, which is 21,330. So compare that to Liga MX 21,847. Liga MX, it's slightly ahead in
Slightly.
numbers. Yeah, but I mean, Liga MX, their stadiums, I would say, they're a lot smaller if you take out El Estadio Azteca, right, which is huge. I think they range in that range of like 20,000 to maybe 35,000 for the most part. While MLS has a lot more. I guess a lot more variety, right? The MLS has a lot of small stadiums as well, which are like
Yeah.
20,000. But then you have like Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Seattle, which is
Oh.
huge, Portland, which I think fits like a good 28. You have New York Red Bulls fits like 30 something, I believe. NYCFC Yankee Stadium fits a good amount. So there's a huge variety there in terms of stadium size, but in terms of average attendance, Liga MX is it's the winner. So 1 point for Liga MX. Um, Marketability. Obviously, this is huge. Huge pushes by the MLS and the Saudi Pro League for this. MLS, now counts on Messi, and it's close to bringing in the whole, like I said, Barcelona squad back together there at Intermiami, with
Sí.
Busquets,
Jordi
Jordi
Alba.
Alba. Yeah, I think they want to bring Luis Suarez.
Dude,
Um,
I saw somewhere online that Andres Iniesta was also looking into joining them.
yeah, how
Dude,
old is he now?
almost 40. I think he's 39. Yeah,
They want to make like all their eggs in one basket. Inter Miami, one
exactly.
last push.
That would
That's
be
funny.
crazy.
Yeah, man. Um, MLS definitely has the most players from different countries around the world out of any league in the world. So that's
Yeah.
a huge plus. You could basically be from anywhere in the world and have somebody representing your country in the MLS. Um, uh, my opinion here, I don't know how you feel about this, but in my opinion, MLS has the most consistency in their kits and probably the best looking kits out of the three leagues just because it's Adidas that just sponsors everyone. You don't have these random no name brands that are making shirts. Um, they just all look consistently decent or good across the board. You obviously have every once in a while some crappy ones from Adidas, but I think having one sponsor for all the leagues just makes it look clean. But again,
Yeah,
that's just my point of view.
yeah, I agree with that specific part of your point of view. Is that of course having just one sponsor helps to, I guess, remove uncertainty or I guess the mismatch of kids throughout the league. I also like the fact that they don't really have a lot of sponsors on the shirts, which
Yeah,
I think makes it look really clean. Because if you look at, I'm not, I haven't been able to sit down and look at all of to a variety of the SPL kits. But if you look at the Liga MX ones, they're plagued with nothing but sponsors,
yeah,
um, and so that kind of sort of also shoots themselves shoot well all the teams shoot themselves on the foot because of that specific reason and the it is not a lie that they have all these sponsors on the shirt because they need all the money to hire players and compete against MLS. um, but I do want to I do want to say something. I with the MLS, I think there's definitely some fire kits like the second kit for RB New York. I really like the pink one from Portland Timbers. So there's definitely a good amount of kits that are neat. They're great. In Mexico, it's tough because Nike and Adidas have been consistently getting jumping out of Mexico for the last, I don't know, 10 years, and they only have like a stronghold of teams that they deem to be valuable for their brand. One of them being Tigres, America, Pumas, Monterrey has Puma. But other than that, pretty much the rest of the teams are spread amongst Mexican brands like Charlie, which
Charlie.
I personally think they have some of the nastiest kits that I've seen in my life. Some of them are decent, but for the most part, they're just disgusting, man. And of course, having all these sponsors on the shirt doesn't really help them. As far as looking at the ones from the Saudi league, I mean, I think they're just they're boring. They're meh. They don't really have that many sponsors, so and then the ones that they have, they look disgusting too. And I don't think they have like any attitude towards them, right? I don't see like any specific you know resemblance to anything. I don't think there's like a specific tie to to something. I mean, there's a lack of imagination definitely on the Saudi league kids.
Yeah, you spoke about Adidas and Nike of Mexico. I mean, they have Under Armour, they have Puma, they have Charlie, like you mentioned. I think they had seven sponsor or brands, kit brands, compared to MLS has one. And I
Mhm.
think we said that Saudi has 11. A lot of them being just local Saudi
Yeah,
brands, which when you're talking about marketability, it doesn't bode well, right? You want the biggest names for your marketing. Um, Finishing up here in MLS, MLS has the most teams. They have 30 teams. Saudi and Liga MX have 18.
yeah,
30 teams can be good and bad. We'll discuss it. Bad, it kind of waters down the product when you have so many teams. But for marketability, it's good, right? You have the most amount of players from different countries in the world and the most amount of teams. That creates more jerseys, more opportunity for sales. Uh, you know, you being a Mexican guy, you're wearing a Seattle jersey because you like this jersey, right? I mean,
yeah,
like I'm from Houston. The Houston jerseys are sometimes, right? But I mean, like you said, I've seen some cool ones that I wouldn't mind wearing just because they're cool jerseys. So
exactly.
there's that attractiveness to outsiders. Man, the jerseys are cool. Man, I could pick a team and go from the 30 teams because one of my paisas, one of my countrymen plays for that team.
Hmm.
So there's always that marketability. And the last thing for MLS that I want to cover is the season pass that they have with Apple. 100 over 100 countries worldwide. English, Spanish, French, German. They broadcast in every freaking language, and it's just everywhere, easy access to get, and that's something that can't be said about the Saudi Pro League or Liga MX.
Hmm.
Just real quick, I'll let you cover Liga MX, but Saudi Pro, like we mentioned, they have 18 teams, 11 different kit brands, a lot, not too much quality there. Very hard to watch the Saudi Pro League on TV if you're not in that area, that region of the world, and they're making a big push to be marketable. They signed CR7, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo. They have Karim Benzema, Jordan Henderson, N'Golo Kante, Mahrez from Man City, Mendy from Chelsea, Bobby Firmino, Ruben Neves, Koulibaly, Jota. So they're really pushing to get these
Yeah.
stars, which eventually, I mean, we saw last week the Messi effect, how everybody tuned in. I mean, people are going to tune in to see these stars, right? I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo obviously had that same effect. Um, Tell us about how Liga MX, their how can we watch them? How easy it is to watch them compared to MLS and Saudi, and their reach to get big players like the lights of CR7 or
Yeah, so for the last years, it has been difficult for the Mexican teams to attract big names, right? It hasn't been difficult to attract players who have been in Europe and then, come down to Mexico to play. And most recently, they haven't been, they have been bringing players uh, that are shortly after their peak, right? They're like 28, 29, 30 years old. They're coming to the Mexican League and they're still having, a good performance. They have good form with their teams. The most recent examples are, of course, Andre Pierre Gignac. I would say Rafael Carioca. If you look at Monterrey, Rogelio Funes Mori, and they're about to sign Sergio Canales, which is a very strong player at Real Betis. So there are definitely, they have made. I think they have found their specific niche of ex-European players that they can go for because they cannot definitely compete to attract the big names like Messi and CR7 and the likes of even if it's two three steps down from those names. I don't think any Mexican team can afford to bring the likes of Brozovic, the likes of Jota. They just don't have that kind of money. So they kind of settle for that talent that is maybe it's not class A talent, but it's class B talent. But class B talent in Europe, it's class A talent in Liga MX. So I will take that. I will take those kind of players any day if Tigres wants to bring him in. Um, and so, I mean, given said that, when you look at the broadcastability, I guess, if that's a word, of Liga MX, you know, being in the States for like the last 13 years, it has been somewhat of a struggle to consistently watch Liga MX without having to use the pirate sites. Just because of, how I would say it's difficult. As years go by, it has become more difficult to watch Liga MX, not only in the United States but also in Mexico, because since the broadcast rights are not sold as a unit, they're sold per team. Each team has its own broadcaster. So depending which team you're going for, or whoever. I mean, for example, if Tigres is playing against Puebla at Puebla, maybe Tebasteca will have it. But if you live in Monterrey, you won't have access to see to watch the game on free TV. You will have to buy a pay per view, or you will have to you will need to have access to an online platform like Fox Premier, like VIX, ESPN Plus, or Star Plus, right? So you're bound to have like all this plethora of different services or pay per view services if you really want to watch all the matches from your team. And here in the states, for example, you are essentially trying to change you to getting a cable system. So if you really want to watch Liga MX, you have to have a system where you can see Univision Deportes, because that's the only network channel that will have pretty much all of the matches from Liga MX. You may have a couple of them on ESPN Plus or Fox Sports, but I would say like 14 out of the 18 teams from Liga MX are broadcasted by Univision Deportes. So even if you have VIX, right? For example, myself, I use VIX, and the only here in the states, VIX only has a handful of games. They don't have all games like in Mexico. If you have VIX in Mexico, you have access to pretty much all the matches. But here, if you really want to see all the matches, you have to get VIX plus a VPN. So it's that's what I'm doing right now. And even then, you have to be like rotating VPNs because they block some of these VPNs, right? So you have to find ways around it. And it's just I'm just tired of having to jump from pirate site to pirate site, when in reality it's like, man, if Liga MX had a freaking app like the NFL, right? And if I was bound to pay $12 a month, dude, I will pay it to watch Liga MX. I don't really understand why they make it so difficult for the fans to watch Liga MX.
Yeah, I used to. Obviously, you mentioned for the last 10 years you've been here, 10, 12 years. It's been like that, but that's because that's the rise of streaming platforms. It never was like that. I grew up in the states my whole life watching Liga MX. It used to always be consistently. You wanted to watch a game, it would be on. But with the adaptation and the growth of streaming platforms, everybody wants their cut. Everybody wants to do their own thing.
Yeah,
It's nice to have a place like Apple TV where you can just sit down and watch every game live at your convenience, right? So I
dude,
think marketability definitely goes to MLS.
big time.
Um, let's go on to team parity. How competitive are the leagues? Is there only one team winning every year, like in some leagues in Europe, aka Bundesliga? Does one owner own multiple teams, or every team? Is the league just a one owner type league? Starting off with MLS, there's been 9 champions in the last 10 years, so the good variety parity there. No multi ownership, multi propiedad, multi property. Of the league teams. So I can't be a guy who owns Dynamo, who owns Dallas, and who owns Austin FC. Right? I can only own one team. Uh, but the league is a single entity league, so
Yeah,
that makes it very weird for some. It makes some very weird calls in MLS, right? Some very weird limitations. Um, there's obviously several teams that arguably have more capital access. MLS does a good job in trying to keep things leveled with salary caps, designated players, which a lot of people are not fans of. I'm not really a fan of
yeah.
it, but I could see the pluses. Right, you don't have things
Mhm.
like the Bundesliga, the
Or La Liga.
SPL or La Liga. Yeah, the
Yeah,
SPL Saudi Pro League has had 4 different clubs winning in the last 10 years. I think the private interest fund or whatever the Saudi government owns. They just bought 4 more teams. They own
yeah,
like 75% of the teams in the league now. So
yeah.
it's starting to become kind of like MLS, right? You have one sole proprietor, one sole owner.
It's
But
the
go on.
Sorry, these guys are the owners of Newcastle as well. So it's the Saudi Public Investment Fund.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why Newcastle's going to be tearing it up in a few years.
I know.
Um, and the thing with them, obviously, is no salary cap.
Hmm.
What about Liga MX? You mentioned there's
Dude.
two tournaments per season, so you have two
Uh-huh.
winners. You could have two winners per year. So
Hmm.
in the last 10 years, you could have 20 different winners, right?
Yes.
How has the last 10 years looked? What does ownership look down there in Mexico?
So I'm not gonna dabble into which, I mean, how many times a team has won the championship in the last 10 years. I'm just gonna say how many different teams have won a championship in Mexico for the last 10 years. And if you go through, starting from Clausura 2020 to Apertura 2012 and 2013 to the last, I guess this year, the most recent tournament, you had 10 different teams winning a championship, right? It doesn't really matter if it's Clausura or Apertura, but we had 10 different teams winning a championship in Mexico. And then that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because it keeps the league interesting in the sense that you don't really know uh, who's going to win it, right? And every 6 months you have a chance to see a different team become the champion. And it's also a bad thing because, at least in my perspective, I really don't like the format of the tournament where you have two different championships. I think it should be just a full year, just like a European league, but that's for a different topic. As far as multi properties or multi ownership, multi propiedad, this is something that Mexico has to struggle for its entire history. Right back in the late '90s, early 2000s, it was America owning, of course, America, Televisa owning America and owning Necaxa, TV Azteca owning like two or three different teams. So it has always been there. And you can see it throughout the contemporary history, the contemporary times of Liga MX. As of today, there's six teams that are owned by one. Well, not six, well, there are six teams that have the same own. Let me rephrase that. It isn't like they aren't owned by the same guy, but there are six teams in the league who are part of the multi propiedad. So, for example, we have Grupo Pachuca who owns Pachuca and León. You have the Orlegui who owns Atlas and Santos. You have Tebasteca who owns Puebla and Mazatlan. And then you have Grupo Caliente who owns Querétaro and Tijuana. So there's a lot of arguments for and against multipropiedad. I am honestly ambivalent. I don't really care if there's an owner that owns two teams. I think it's to me, it doesn't really make a difference for Liga MX. All I care is for these owners putting, investing on the teams and making them competitive so the league can grow. If multipropiedad helps the league to, become a better product, then so be it. But if multipropiedad is affecting the league and is making it worse, then there's a reason to change. So to me, that's I can be convinced either or, right? I don't really care about multipropiedad. I don't really mind if it exists as long as it's benefiting the league. And then this also segues into capital access for the entire league. While uh, while Liga MX remains highly competitive, in my opinion, in my own view, um, it isn't a lie that it's heavily skewed in terms of capital access. There's maybe arguably six teams in the league that have the means to remain competitive economically speaking, and those are Tigres, Monterrey, America, Chivas, Cruz Azul, and maybe the and I count them as one, but it's essentially two teams, León and Pachuca. The rest of them are either they are necessarily profitable, but at this or if they are, they don't have enough reach to get more money in and have and invest on better players. So, for example, Mazatlan, even though Mazatlan is owned by TV Azteca, they don't really invest a lot on that team. The likes of Puebla, Querétaro, who else is on that list? Bravos de Ciudad Juarez. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that aren't necessarily well equipped with the capital means to be competitive. So that's why every single tournament or every single 6 months, you have this group of six teams who arguably will compete for a spot in Liguilla, and the rest of them is just essentially a toss, right? Let's see who becomes a dark horse. So I think in that specific perspective, even though the Saudi league has a huge investment on four specific teams, I still feel that the rest of the other, and this is my ignorant opinion on the Saudi Pro League. If there's a PPG fan out there that knows a lot about SPL, please correct me. But to me, it's like all of these teams have money. It just so happens that four teams have way more money than the other ones, right? And in Liga
Yeah.
MX is there's only six teams that have some money, and the rest of them are essentially scrapping for sponsorships and like class B players from these top six teams.
Yeah, and while MLS, it's like they all are pretty consistently across the board, but you have some owners that are completely stingy that don't like to spend at all, and then you have
Yeah.
owners like the LAFC, LA Galaxy, Intermiami, NYCFC that like to spend a lot. So yeah, there's a limit in salary cap, but those owners like to be right on that limit or find loopholes to go over it, while some owners like San Jose Earthquakes,
Oh
NYRB,
yeah. Salt Lake
Houston
City.
Dynamo, Salt Lake City, they don't spend at all. And
Yeah.
you see that on the pitch, right, and in the stands, they have like the lowest attendance in the league. So
Hmm.
I think here, man, we kind of agreed that it's for different reasons. It's a tie between Liga MX and MLS.
Yeah.
Um, there's I think there's enough for MLS has the more variety in terms of parity of winners in the last 10 years with nine. Liga MX still has that parity. However, you mentioned there's six big teams, but there's still playoffs makes a huge difference in that it's a one-off game or two-off home and away, where if you're not one of those six teams, you could still have the chance to eliminate one of those big teams if you have two good games, right? We've seen that a lot with like Atlas.
Yeah.
We've seen that with a lot of the winners that just like Tigres last season were one of obviously they're one of the big teams, but they qualified like eighth or ninth, and they ended up winning the league. So you could qualify barely, and you could still win the league. So that I think it shows parity in the league in both leagues. You don't have those four super rich clubs like SPL where it's we like to crap on playoffs, but playoffs are pretty fun to watch, especially in Liga
Yeah.
MX.
Yeah.
SPL is just like your typical European league where it's the best team and at the end wins it, right? So
Hmm.
okay, MLS has not single or multi property, but they're single owned, while Liga MX has multi property, but it's like the league is owned by all the owners of the team. So you do have that variety. So I think we're going to say this is a tie between Liga MX and MLS on team parity. Let's move on to fan base here, man. Why don't you talk us through Liga MX? Liga MX, there's a lot of passion down there. Obviously,
Yeah.
soccer is the biggest sport in Mexico. What do you attribute this to?
I would say that this is probably the one aspect that we're gonna go over on this episode that the Liga MX just pretty much obliterates the other leagues. There's no doubt that Liga MX has the most passionate fans. I think in terms of the attendance numbers and what we see historically speaking. You also have like great rivalries, right? In Liga MX, you have a Clásico Regio, you have a Clásico Nacional, you have like a bunch of clásicos in Mexico City, Pumas against America, Pumas against Cruz Azul against America. Um, and then like just more recently, you have good matches between Santos and the Regio teams. You have Atlas versus Guadalajara. So there's definitely like regional and national rivalries that La Liga MX really takes advantage on. So I think that's
And rivalries that were born naturally, right?
yes.
Not
Exactly.
forced and like, oh, we're gonna create a team out of nowhere. And
Mhm.
like, I'm looking at you, MLS. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go for it.
No, it's all good. It's all good because you're right. Of course, for example, if you look at Clásico Nacionales América against Guadalajara, they're not from the same city, but these are the two biggest teams in Mexico. And just by the sheer nature of being the two best, or not best, but the biggest teams in Mexico, that created this natural rivalry amongst them or between them. So I think there's no denial that those specific regional and national rivalries have. Played a strong advantage for Liga MX in this specific aspect. And then just most recently in contemporary, you see the likes of American Tigres becoming, their own rivalry, right? So some people like to call it the new national Clásico, which I would agree, not because I'm a Tigres fan, but because of the nature of them being the teams with the most championships in the recent history. But yeah, those things happen, and this is natural, right? It's not forced. At the same time, one thing that we mentioned uh, on the previous, I guess, aspect that we discussed is that Liga MX remains highly competitive in the sense that it's very unpredictable. It's difficult to predict who's going to win in Liga MX. You might be a great data analyst, right? You might have access to all the data that you want, and you say, okay, I have all these correlation tables and all this crap. And
Right.
when you do a parlay, you're not gonna have 100% parlay in Liga MX because it's just unpredictable, my guy. It's just that's the nature of Liga MX. You can have Tigres winning every single match for the last 6 matches, show up against Puebla, who has lost 4 out of the 6 matches, and Puebla just destroys them on the pitch, right? And so that's the fun part about Liga MX, is that it's highly unpredictable. You don't really know what's going to happen. It also has a lot of hilarious mementos in the league. You have ducks showing up on the pitch. You have players doing random stuff. You have fans doing also very hilarious things on the pitch. I would jump, well, not necessarily jump in the pitch, but on the stands. So it's a highly memeable, if
Yeah,
there's a word for that,
get a lot of
league.
memes. Hmm.
Exactly. And so, of course, in addition to these points, also it's soccer is by far the most popular sport in Mexico, and the fact that Liga MX used to have promotion and relegation, also helped to build the fan base, build the team spirit, right? Build the connection between the people and the team. And I can tell you, from my experience, when I was very young, but when Tigres went down from what back in the day when we used to have Primera I think it was called Primera, and that was the name of the top flight in Mexico. And then the second division was Primera A. So when Tigres went from Primera to Primera A, that's when this whole connection between the fan base and the team grew stronger. And that specific aspect of the league helped Tigres to become one of the most passionate teams in Mexico.
Yeah, definitely. That pro rel plays a big role. It's sad that they don't have it yet. Apparently, they are going to bring it back. So let's hope they bring it back soon. I think they were saying the next 2-3 years. But in MLS, moving on to MLS here, you have fan bases that sell out every game, right? Austin FC, Atlanta, Seattle, Portland. Then you have teams that really don't sell at all: Houston, Intermiami, pre-Messi, NYRB, San Jose. A lot of these teams that do sell out are like Seattle, for example, that had a team previously in like the lower leagues, and that same basis was kind of brought to MLS. They were able to fund it to be able to bring it into MLS, keep the name and that history more or less. That's
Yeah.
why that's so well rooted, like you mentioned, into the community, and they support it. You can see it every day, right? Versus something like, I don't know, like I'll speak from my point of view, like Houston, that was just brought to the league with money, right? They bought themselves into the league. Um, you don't see that fan base show up for it because it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's not something that has been there for 50 years, that you've seen the team go through highs and lows, that you've seen the team struggle through the third division, go up to the second division, go up to the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
So it's like, why bother, right? I mean, obviously that's in every American sport. You don't have pro rel, but those sports have been around so much longer. NFL has been around for 100 years, NBA since the you know 70 or 70, 80 years. Hockey has been around forever. So this is a much younger sport in the USA,
Yeah.
with soccer still growing, and without that community connection there, you just don't see that passion that you see in Mexico. Again, like one of the downsides we have here in the notes, the teams are all very young. They're just not that connection, right, to like a
Yeah.
historic team that worked their way
Mhm.
up the ranks. And soccer being the fifth biggest sport in USA doesn't help, right? I mean, you have to compete in Mexico. You don't have to compete against NFL, NBA,
No,
NHL.
you don't.
So that's something you have to compete with here. Saudi,
Yeah.
it's a little older of a league. It started in 1976, but it didn't really become like the pro league until like 2006, I think is what I read. So there's still that connection with the fan base. And though soccer is by far the biggest sport in Saudi Arabia, um, they connect more to European teams. They follow, at least from what I've read, they follow more. I'm a Manchester United supporter. I'm a Real Madrid supporter. I'm an Arsenal supporter, versus their local leagues, because their local
Yeah.
leagues have always just been an afterthought. Right
Yeah.
now that it's growing and they're purchasing all these high quality players, we'll probably see a difference, and that'll probably grow. But I think for the most part, they're always going to be that. I'm a Manchester United supporter before I'm an Al Nassr supporter, right? Versus
Yeah.
like us, we prefer watching Liga MX and Tigres. Versus, yeah, we're Chelsea fans, we love Chelsea, but we love watching our local, tigres,
Yes.
right. So they have that, they don't have that connection to their local teams, right. So I think here it's a no-brainer, like you said when we started this part of the segment. Fan bases, Liga MX. um,
Definitely.
let's go to the next item here. We're talking about player exportation, and this is one where I think it switches from Liga MX.
Yeah.
Something we've have come to realize and come to see is that MLS, like we said, they're the best most marketable league.
Yeah.
They're all that's consistent across the board here and goes with player exportation. They do the best in, with their MLS Next Pro, with their, bringing youth through the ranks, giving youth a
Yeah.
chance, selling youth to Europe, making money
Hmm.
for MLS clubs by selling youth to Europe, having clauses in contracts saying if they help you win the Champions League or help you qualify for the Champions League or stay up, we'll get more money through it. MLS does everything it can to help export young talent to Europe. Um, while same can't be said to Liga MX, right? I mean, they export talent, but nowhere at a rate that the MLS does.
Yeah. No,
And
Liga make. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
no, I was just going to say that even we see sometimes players coming back, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Liga MX is not a league where you export players. It's not an exporting league. If anything, it's an importing league. Uh, and as you mentioned, they even bring back the talent that just recently moved out of Liga MX. For example, now you have rumors that Cesar Montes might join America after being 6 months in freaking El Español, right?
Right.
So, I mean, Liga MX is its own market, it's its own niche, its own bubble because of the lack of young talent development, which makes the Mexican player very scarce in the league. And so when a Mexican player is top talent, in terms of uh, Liga MX, right, or for a Mexican player, they throw money at it, right, and that's also a hurdle that the league haven't been able or is not willing, at least it shows, is not willing to address. And so that hinders that this specific uh, point of view of Liga MX, where if Pachuca is developing, if Pachuca and Santos are the ones developing talent, right, and they have a very strong player, America, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Tigres will throw $10 million for that player, even though it's a player that it's maybe 21 years old, 22 years old, hasn't he hasn't proven anything in the league, right? But he is the next prospect in Mexican football. They want it because it's not a priority for Liga MX in general to develop talent.
Yeah, Liga MX is kind of, it's, you said, its own entity, right?
Yeah,
Whereas in USA, MLS likes to work hand in hand with USSF. And Liga MX is more about, what am I going to do for myself to succeed and
exactly.
stay profitable and sustainable. I don't really care if I'm going to help or hinder la
Eltri.
selección,
Yeah.
right? Entry.
Hmm.
And what can we say about Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Pro League? I mean, they have unlimited amount of cash, but they don't export; they import
No.
talent, and I mean that's how they're going to grow. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe one day they'll get to the point where they start exporting. The league again is still very young, and they have unlimited resources. So, in terms of player exports, no brainer, winner
MLS.
MLS.
Yeah. Big time.
Now, the last category, which is kind of an open-ended category that we want to discuss, the miscellaneous category, just a lot of different factors, right? The promotion, relegation, salary cap, future growth potential, attractiveness of the league to players, money-wise and lifestyle-wise. Speaking of MLS, no pro rel. There's pros to it. There's cons to it. People like to be on one side of it. People like to be on the other side of it. I personally am a fan of it. Will it work in USA? I don't know, just because there's not that history with the clubs that we mentioned. That, like, will you go support your team if it gets relegated? No, I barely support it, even in the first division. Why would I go support it when it gets relegated? Right? I mean,
Exactly.
it has that risk of maybe a lot of teams, which is why I feel they haven't implemented pro rel. That risk of teams just losing crap ton amount of cash, right?
Hmm.
Um, Salary cap again has its pros and cons. Keeps it even, but prevents you from really competing in the market with Saudi, right? Um, the MLS being its own sole ownership hampers things. Like we had with Pizarro from Inter Miami, he was like all confused when Inter was
I know
to
what
trade
the hell.
him. He had no idea that his contract belonged to
Dumb,
MLS and not to Inter, and just
dumb.
a huge mess with designated players, and it's its own thing completely from the rest of the world. Um, Future growth potential. MLS is growing like crazy. It can only keep growing in the United States with Copa America next summer, the World Cup in 2026. Messi is going to see significant growth, I feel, and it's already you're already able to see that in the youth teams and the national team. All these younger players that are playing their football. Abroad, many of which started with MLS Next or an MLS Pro, whatever it's called, with the youth system,
Hmm.
and got sent over abroad. It is growing. It's growing talent, but it's doing it its own Americanized way, right?
Yeah.
There's also that attractiveness to foreign players like Messi. They could come here and have a semi-normal life, right? A life
Yes.
where they don't get recognized everywhere they go, and
Mhm.
can be able to live their lives as normal as possible in being the biggest stars they are. And you have that attractiveness of big cities like New York, LA,
Miami,
um, Miami, where Saudi has that attractiveness of paying you so much, but you're going to be living in a desert for the most
middle of
part.
yeah, middle of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Um,
One thing that baffles me about MLS is that they even have franchises. They have yet to play a match, and they are valued as much as a European team that has more than 50 years. Can you
right.
believe that?
That is
Isn't that
insane.
crazy?
Yeah. I don't know where that valuation. Like I was reading an article that it used to take when Beckham was in the league or when Beckham bought into Inter Miami, I think it was like 70 million. And now, if you want to buy into the league, you have to pay like $500 million to get a team at least started. It's insane.
It
They're
is.
saying Inter Miami might be the like in a year or two might be worth like 1.2 billion just with
What
all the
the
things they're bringing
hell,
in,
man?
all the marketing, all the sales are going to make off that Messi deal, Busquets deal, Jordi Alba deal. So yeah, it's crazy the growth that they're seeing. Um, Quickly to cover the Saudi Pro League, you know they have pro relegation. They're the only league to do it right now. Will Liga
Hmm.
MX bring it back? We hear they will, but as of right now, we can't give them points for having it because they don't have it currently. They have a system similar to Europe. 3 teams get relegated, 3 get promoted. They don't have a salary cap, so they can compete with all the European teams and then more. They have unlimited amount of money, and just the fact that the PIF owns. They just purchased 4 more teams. They own 70% of the league, can be a hindrance, but I think it's going to become like the MLS in that it might just be a single property owner of the league, right? PIF is going to end up owning everything and might
Yeah.
make it. I think their ultimate goal was to get huge stars on every team and just grow it. In terms of potential for growth, I think theirs is unlimited. I think the only thing that really hinders them is, do I want to go play in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Right? I
Uh
mean,
huh.
do I want to go play in the middle of the desert, and really be limited? Saudi, I'm sure, has its perks, but there's a lot of different cultural limitations that just happen religiously and culturally that can limit you being a Westerner, right? That
Yeah.
you don't really get into by going to MLS or Liga MX. What can you tell us about Liga MX?
The beautiful Liga MX. I mean, as you know, Liga MX used to have pro and relegation. They shut that down shortly after COVID started, uh, quoting that it was meant to help teams, I guess, not lose that much cash. But the conspiracy theory behind it is that they were trying to protect Chivas because Chivas was sucking ass big time, and they were this close to get relegated, so they didn't want to lose a big team during relegation. So and also when relegation was there, it wasn't even like a regular relegation where 3 teams go down and 2 go up, or 1 go down and 1 go up, right? It was
Right.
more of like, it was like as we have discussed in previous episodes in PPG, it's like a coefficient that it's like, the total amount of games that you have played in a year divided by the points that you made, I think, and that will give you a coefficient. and that coefficient will tell you, will give you a ranking, and the bottom one on the ranking will get relegated, and then whoever's playing a Liga Expansión, whoever wins the Campeón de Campeones, because there's also two tournaments in Liga Expansión. So if whoever wins the playoff match between the winner of Apertura and Clausura will then go up and get promoted. So there's talks that they're gonna bring it back, but with a different spin. Where I think they were trying to relegate two teams. One will go down directly, and the other one will have a playoff match against whoever wins. I guess a quick round robin or whatever, with a couple of the expansion teams. But it's still, it's all mouth, no action. I don't think it's gonna come back anytime soon because Liga Expansión went through a couple of changes, and the most relevant one is that there's like 20 something teams in Liga Expansión, and only I think only 6 to 9 are FIFA certified or Liga MX certified, and that has different requirements that you have to meet. One of them being having a stadium with a specific amount of capacity. I think having a woman team, academy system. There's a couple of things that you have to check off. Uh, and there's only 9 teams, 6 to 9 teams that actually qualify for getting promoted to Liga MX if that ever comes back. So that's one thing that is hindering Liga MX in terms of uh, just miscellaneous additional things. As we mentioned, there's multi ownership with a few owners owning a total of 6 teams. It's heavily skewed in terms of capital access. There's no salary cap, but I'm not too sure if that's something that we should brag about. I mean, it's even if you don't have salary cap, it isn't like they're not going for like big names anymore, right? They're not trying to attract the likes
Right.
of Messi, and then, because they can you just cannot afford it. They just can't. They can't afford it. So it's nice that they don't have a salary cap because you have teams like Monterrey, teams like Tigres, America that have good relevant players that are able to pay them so they remain on the team and they become competitive. But I don't think it's necessarily a specific advantage for the team, for the league in general. And then and overall, if you look at the three leagues that we're comparing today, I think arguably you can say that even historically speaking and in contemporary history, you can say that Liga MX teams are significantly the strongest teams in at least CONCACAF. And when you compare them against the history of the Saudi Pro League, you can also make the argument that they are better ranked in general and have, I guess, stronger competitiveness throughout their entire history.
Yeah, so for these miscellaneous items, I think if you look at it as a whole, look at pro rel, look at salary cap, look at the lifestyle that the league offers, the lifestyle the country
Mhm.
offers, the lifestyle that players can get offered, money they can get offered. It's a lot to look at, but it's I think Liga MX edges it at least for now. If I know there's talks between Garber and the owners that they might raise the salary cap or get rid of it, and again, that in a league like MLS with so many different owners and that ability to attract so many players, that could get dangerous. It could skew it,
Yeah.
make it European style, right? But I think Liga MX has the sweet spot in that okay, there's no salary cap, but nobody's going out there and just completely obliterating everybody else in terms of
Yeah. Yes.
buying
Uh-huh.
the best talent. And not that they wouldn't if they could. I'm sure they would, but they just can't afford it, right?
Mhm.
They're stuck in that they don't have a salary cap, but they're also not the most wealthiest of compared to other markets. So
Yeah.
it leads them into a sweet spot where there's parity, there's competition between the teams for the most part. There's different winners constantly, and there's pro rel. Well, if they bring pro rel back, I think that'll make Liga MX that much greater again. And the no salary cap all kind of come in together, and you also have cities like why would I go live in the desert in Saudi Arabia when I could live in La Ciudad de Mexico, which is a great city.
Yeah. There's only 3 cities in Mexico where you can have, a decent lifestyle. Other than that,
Yeah,
well, I mean, Puebla is not bad, Querétaro is not bad, right? But man, I wouldn't live in Ciudad Juarez,
yeah,
right? Why,
right.
why would I leave Sevilla to live in Ciudad Juarez?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of the cities are attractive though. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like you're going to like the middle of the desert like with Saudi.
yeah.
Um, so I think this one will edge it out to Liga MX just because of what they offer overall. I think the better package in in terms of those categories that we talked to. Now, based off of this in general, a quick summary here. We said attendance, Liga MX, marketability, no question, MLS,
Unless,
team parity. I think we're in agreement that that was between Liga MX and MLS for different reasons. Fan base, Liga MX, player exportation, blew out of the water, MLS all the way there, and miscellaneous pro rail, salary cap, you know, mark living wise, not marketability, future growth or potential. I think we said Liga MX barely edges out the other
barely.
two leagues, um, which is, if you were talking strictly future growth for potential, I think based off money, it might be Saudi, but that's still way further down the line.
Yeah,
Uh, Future
yeah.
growth potentially in the short term, no doubt in my mind,
MLS.
MLS.
Yeah,
Yeah. And MLS can have the ability, I think, to become one of the top leagues in the world eventually. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I think the winner, Liga MX, right? Based off of these six categories we have. If we were to talk to Cristiano Ronaldo and say between Saudi Arabia and MLS, which is what started this conversation, I
uh,
think no question MLS. But Saudi definitely has a potential to become a world power with the amount of money they're spending.
yeah. My guy is out there fighting and saying that the SPL is better. Man, he forgot completely about Liga MX. Everyone is not talking about Liga MX when they should be talking about Liga MX. Man, come on.
Man, that's the real beast here. Um, well, Adrian, this was a fun episode. Maybe we could do one of these every year as things change, right? I mean, let's see
Yeah,
how. Maybe even in a month we'll have news that they got rid of the salary cap in MLS, and that will change our opinion,
yeah,
or things like that. Maybe in a year they bring back Pro Rel to Liga MX.
yeah,
So it'll be nice to see how this compares in a year or two, or in the long term, right? How we see in 5 years Saudi Arabia, how that's grown. So as of right now, yeah, I think without a question, Liga MX leads in a lot of important aspects of football, while MLS is right there, right behind it. But things can quickly change in this world of sport. The
yeah.
man, as we wrap this up, bro, where can our listeners find us, dude?
You can always find us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. You can also find us on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast on. Last but not least, you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Puro Pinche Gol. We post stuff every now and then.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on your preferred social media platform of choice, and let us know in the comments. This was, if you stuck with us through these 54 minutes, thank you. Appreciate you listening to us,
Yes.
listening to our dissection of these three leagues. Let us know. Are you in agreement with us? If not, I'm sure a lot of y'all will not be. Who do you think is the better league at this point in time currently? Who do you think has the best potential for growth? We'd love to hear with you guys and discuss with
Yeah.
you guys, and definitely like to hear y'all's opinions on that. At the end, man, been a great one with you. See you in the next one,
It's
brother.
always a pleasure, my guy. Take it easy.
See you, man.
Deuce.
Deuce.